The morning shift on Nexus Prime started like any other day. Station workers moved through the metal corridors, carrying their coffee and checking their data pads. The massive space station spun slowly in the void, its artificial gravity keeping everyone's feet on the ground. Outside the windows, stars twinkled in the endless darkness of space. Counselor Veltar walked into the main assembly hall early, as he always did. The tall, blue-skinned Altarian liked to review his notes before the big meetings. Today was important. The Galactic Council would discuss new trade agreements between 47 different alien species. These talks had been going on for months. As Veltar arranged his papers, he noticed something strange. The human section was empty. All 20 seats where the human delegates usually sat were vacant. No briefcases, no water bottles, no sign that anyone had been there at all. This was odd. Humans were never late. In fact, they were usually the first ones to arrive. Ambassador Hyunwoo always came in 30 minutes early, sipping his strange black coffee and reading through documents. Dr. So-Young would be right behind him, checking her scientific reports on her tablet. Veltar checked his timepiece. The meeting would start in 1 hour. Maybe the humans were running late for some reason. He tried not to worry about it. More delegates began filing into the hall. The Zentarians arrived in their flowing purple robes, making small talk in their musical language. The Corvan representatives stomped in with their heavy boots, their gray skin looking rough under the bright lights. The peaceful Lithians floated, in on their hover platforms, their small bodies glowing softly. But still no humans. Prime Minister Kix Thule, the lead Zentarian delegate, noticed the empty human section too. He made a dismissive sound through his nose slits. "Typical humans," he said to his aide, "always making everything about themselves. Probably trying to make some dramatic entrance." Veltar didn't like that comment. Humans weren't dramatic. They were reliable, practical, and honest. Sometimes too honest for their own good. They had helped solve more conflicts in the past 50 years than any other species in the galaxy. When the meeting officially started, the empty human seats became impossible to ignore. Council Speaker Mordex, an ancient being whose species was older than recorded history, looked at the vacant section with concern. "Has anyone heard from the human delegation?" Mordex asked, his voice echoing through the hall. Silence filled the room. Delegates looked at each other and shrugged. No one had seen any humans that morning. Veltar raised his hand. "I can try to contact Ambassador Hyunwoo directly." He activated his communication device and sent a message to the human ambassador's personal channel. The device showed that the message was sent, but no response came back. "Maybe they're dealing with some emergency," suggested Lithian Representative Silara, her voice soft and worried. "Humans are always helping someone somewhere." "Or maybe they're finally showing their true colors," grumbled Kixthul. "Perhaps they've decided they're too good to sit with the rest of us." This made Veltar angry, but he kept his voice calm. "That's not fair, and you know it. Humans have been our most reliable partners for decades. Something must be wrong." The council decided to take a short break while they tried to figure out where the humans were. Veltar walked to the station's communication center and asked the technicians to try reaching any human ship or colony. What they found made everyone's blood run cold. "Sir," said the head technician, a nervous creature with too many eyes, "we're getting no responses from any human locations, not one." "What do you mean?" Veltar asked. "I mean no responses at all. Earth isn't answering. The human colonies on Kepler 442b and Proxima Centauri b are silent. The human trading posts, the mining operations, the research stations, nothing. It's like they all just stopped talking." Veltar felt a chill run down his spine. "Are their facilities still there? Can you detect their ships?" The technician's eyes moved independently as he checked multiple screens. "That's the weird part. All their buildings are still there. Their ships are still in orbit or traveling through space. The power signatures look normal, but no one is answering our calls." "Send out some scout ships," Veltar ordered. I want teams to check the nearest human facilities immediately. Within hours, the scout ships began reporting back. What they found was impossible to understand. The human mining colony on Asteroid Belt 7 was completely operational. Machines were still digging valuable metals from the rock. The air recycling systems were working perfectly. Food was still warm in the cafeteria. But there were no humans anywhere. Their personal belongings were still in their rooms. Half-finished meals sat on tables. Workstations showed that people had been there just hours ago, but the people themselves were gone. The same story came from everywhere they checked. Human cargo ships drifted through space with their engines still running, and their cargo holds full, but no crew on board. Research stations continued their experiments automatically, but the scientists had vanished. Even the massive human dreadnought Soul's Pride was found floating near the Vega system, all systems normal, but Captain Dongmin and his entire crew were nowhere to be found. As the reports came in, the council hall fell into stunned silence. 47 species, representing trillions of beings across the galaxy, sat in shock. The humans, all of them, everywhere, had simply disappeared. Maybe they evacuated for some reason, whispered a Corvan delegate, his gruff voice unusually quiet. Evacuated to where? Asked Veltar. There are no human ships missing. Their entire fleet is accounted for, just empty. Could it be some kind of attack? Suggested another delegate. By who? Mordex replied, his ancient voice heavy with worry. Who could make an entire species disappear without a trace? Without any signs of struggle? Without taking their technology or destroying their facilities? Dr. Fentara, the council's chief scientist, stood up slowly. I've been analyzing the energy readings from the abandoned human locations, she said, her tentacles waving nervously. There are some unusual quantum signatures, but nothing that indicates weapons or violence. It's almost as if they just stopped existing in this space. That's impossible, said Kixthul, though his voice lacked its usual confidence. Is it? Asked Veltar quietly. We thought we knew humans well, but what if we didn't? What if they had capabilities we never suspected? The room fell silent again. Everyone was thinking the same thing, but no one wanted to say it out loud. Humans had always been different. They solved problems other species couldn't solve. They created technologies that seemed impossible. They brought peace where others brought war. What if their greatest capability was one they had never shared? As the first day without humans ended, Veltar looked out at the stars and felt something he had never experienced before. For the first time in his long life, the galaxy felt dangerous and uncertain. Somewhere out there, an entire species had vanished without a word. And somehow, Veltar knew that this was only the beginning. 3 days had passed since the humans vanished, and the galaxy was falling apart. Veltar stood in the emergency command center on Nexus Prime, watching dozens of screens showing chaos across known space. Red warning lights flashed constantly, and the communication channels buzzed with panicked voices from hundreds of worlds. Sir, we have another problem, said Communications Officer Zilvana, her small Lithian body trembling with stress. The trade route between Altair and Centauri has completely shut down. The cargo ships don't know what to do without human traffic controllers. Veltar rubbed his blue forehead with both hands. Everything was happening so fast. 3 days ago, the biggest worry was arguing about metal prices. Now entire star systems were cutting off contact with each other. What about the Corvan situation? He asked. Zilvana checked her screen. General Thokmar has declared that all former human mining operations now belong to the Corvan Empire. He says humans abandoned their claims, so the Corvans can take them. That's ridiculous, snapped Dr. Fentara from across the room. Just because humans aren't there doesn't mean they gave up their rights. They could come back. Could they? Asked a quiet voice from the corner. Everyone turned to look at Morgath, the Thrakari security chief. The big, dark-skinned alien rarely, spoke, but when he did, people listened. His red eyes glowed in the dim light as he stared at a datapad. "What do you mean?" Veltar asked. Morgath walked over to the main display screen. "I've been studying the human military positions. Look at this." He pressed some buttons, and a map of the galaxy appeared. Red dots showed where human warships had been stationed. "These aren't random positions," Morgath continued. "Every single human ship was placed to protect something important. Trade routes, peaceful colonies, areas where different species might fight. It's like they were holding the whole galaxy together." Veltar looked at the map more carefully. Morgath was right. Human ships had been everywhere they were needed most. So without them, everything they were protecting is now in danger. Morgath pointed to a cluster of red dots near Corvin space. "Look here. 3 human dreadnoughts were watching the border between Corvan and Zentorian territory. Guess what happened when those ships went empty?" Before anyone could answer, alarms started ringing throughout the command center. Zilvana's eyes went wide as she read her screen. "General Thokmar just attacked a Zentorian cargo convoy. He claims they were illegally using Corvin space." "But that's a neutral shipping lane," protested Dr. Fentara. "It's been neutral for over a century." "It was neutral because humans guaranteed it would stay neutral," Morgath said grimly. "Now there's no one to enforce that promise." The situation got worse every hour. On the planet Lythe, the peaceful inhabitants sent desperate messages asking for help. Pirate ships were attacking their supply convoys, and the Lithians had no military to defend themselves. For 50 years, human patrol ships had kept the pirates away. On the mining world of Kepler 1649c, 3 different species were fighting over who could dig where. The humans had created a fair system for sharing the valuable metals, but without them to manage it, old arguments had started again. Worst of all, the Universal Translation Network was breaking down. "I don't understand how this is possible," Dr. Fentara said, staring at lines of code on her screen. "The translation computers should work without humans." Veltar tried to contact the Zentorian Prime Minister, but when Kixthul appeared on the communication screen, his words came out as musical nonsense. The automatic translation system showed error messages instead of converting his language to standard Galactic. "The humans didn't just use the translation network," explained Chief Engineer Boktel, a small creature with 6 arms that let him work on multiple computers at once. "They improved it constantly. Every few days they added new words, fixed small problems, and updated the language files. Without them doing that work, the whole system is slowly failing." "How long before it stops working completely?" asked Veltar. Boktel's 6 hands moved quickly across his keyboards. "At this rate, maybe 2 weeks, 3 if we're lucky." Veltar felt sick. Without the translation network, the different species couldn't talk to each other at all. The Galactic Council would become useless. Trade would be impossible. Diplomatic talks would end. Everything would fall apart. "Sir," Zilvana called out urgently, "we're getting reports of fighting near the Vega system. Corvan ships are attacking what they claim is an abandoned human research station." "Is it abandoned?" asked Veltar. "Yes. But the Lithians say that station contains important medical research that could save millions of lives. They want us to protect it. And the Zentorians are demanding we stop the Corvans from taking any more human territory," added another communications officer. "Prime Minister Kixthul says if we don't act, the Zentorians will handle it themselves." Veltar looked around the command center. Everyone was staring at him, waiting for orders. But what could he do? The Galactic Council had never needed to stop wars before. Humans had always done that job. The humans had been peacekeepers, translators, mediators, and protectors. They had been the glue that held galactic civilization together. Now they were gone, and everything was coming apart at once. "Sir," said Morgath quietly, "there's something else you need to know." Veltar was almost afraid to ask. What now? I've been checking the energy readings from human space stations, the ones that control the quantum communication grid. The quantum communication grid was how messages traveled instantly across the galaxy. Without it, talking to someone on the other side of space would take years instead of seconds. The stations are still working, Morgath continued, but the energy levels are dropping. The humans weren't just using this technology, they were actively maintaining it, feeding it power, making repairs. Without them... How long? Veltar asked. The outer systems will lose contact first. Maybe a week. The core systems might last a month. Veltar sat down heavily in his chair. In 1 week, half the galaxy would be cut off from the other half. In a month, every world would be alone in the dark. No communication, no coordination, no way to call for help. We have to do something, whispered Zilvana. What can we do? Asked Dr. Fentara. We don't understand their technology. We can't speak their languages without their translators. We can't keep peace without their ships. We took them for granted, said Morgath. We thought they were just another member species. We never realized they were the foundation that everything else was built on. Outside the command center windows, space looked the same as always. Stars twinkled peacefully in the darkness. But Veltar knew it was an illusion. Out there, worlds were going dark. Ships were fighting battles that no one could stop. Entire civilizations were being cut off from the rest of the galaxy. The humans had been gone for only 3 days. Veltar wondered how much of galactic civilization would be left if they stayed gone for 3 more. 6 months had passed since the humans disappeared, and the galaxy was dying. Veltar walked through the empty corridors of what used to be the human section on Nexus Prime. The lights were dimmer now to save power. Half the stations in the galaxy had gone dark when the quantum communication grid finally failed completely. Whole star systems had simply vanished from contact, lost in the endless black of space. Behind him followed the most important team ever assembled in galactic history. Dr. Zendari, the smartest physicist from Altair, carried a bag full of scanning equipment. Security Chief Morgath held a military data pad containing every piece of information about human defensive positions. Cultural analyst Zilvana floated beside them on her hover platform, her small Lithian body glowing faintly in the dim light. They were the investigation team, and they had one job: find out what happened to the humans before galactic civilization collapsed completely. The first thing we need to understand, said Dr. Zendari, is that humans didn't just vanish randomly. This was planned. She led them to a large room that had been Ambassador Hyunwoo's office. Everything was exactly as he had left it. His coffee cup still sat on the desk, half empty. Papers were scattered around like he had been working right up until the moment he disappeared. But Dr. Zendari wasn't interested in the obvious things. She pulled out a quantum scanner and pointed it at the walls. Look at these energy readings, she said, showing them the scanner's display. There are traces of dimensional manipulation technology everywhere. Very advanced stuff. The kind of science that most species thought was impossible. Morgath checked his data pad. That matches what we found at the human military bases. Every single ship, every station, every colony shows the same energy signatures. Zilvana examined the papers on Hyunwoo's desk. His calendar shows normal meetings scheduled for weeks after he vanished. He was planning to attend a peace conference on Centauri Prime. These aren't the actions of someone who knew he was leaving. Or maybe that's what he wanted us to think, said Dr. Zendari. They spent days going through every piece of human technology they could find. The humans had left behind amazing inventions that no other species could understand. Computers that could think faster than any alien brain. Energy sources that seemed to create power from nothing. Weapons that could destroy entire fleets but had never been used in anger. But the most important discovery came when they reached Earth itself. The human homeworld looked peaceful from space. Cities still had lights. Satellites still orbited normally, but when their ship landed at the spaceport in what humans called Sol, they found the same eerie emptiness that marked every human location. Dr. Zendari led them to a massive building that the humans had called a research center. Inside, they found laboratories full of equipment that hurt their heads just to look at. The science was so advanced that their minds couldn't process what they were seeing. "This is dimensional physics," Dr. Zendari whispered, staring at a machine the size of a building. "They were studying how to move between different realities." Morgath found something even more disturbing in the military section of the building. "Look at this," he said, pointing to a wall covered in star charts. "These aren't maps of our galaxy. They're maps of space beyond our galaxy, far beyond." The charts showed something approaching from the dark space between galaxies. It was huge, bigger than solar systems, and it was moving toward their part of the universe. Red marks on the charts showed when it would arrive. "According to this," said Morgath, "whatever this thing is, it should reach our galaxy in about 2 years." Zilvana found personal logs left behind by Dr. So Young, the human xenobiologist. She had been studying how different species might survive in extreme conditions. Her final entries were disturbing. She was researching evacuation procedures, Zilvana reported. Not for individual planets, but for entire civilizations. She was trying to figure out how to save billions of people if something terrible happened. The breakthrough came when Dr. Zendari managed to activate one of the human computers. Most of the files were locked, but she found a video message that Dr. So Young had recorded just days before the vanishing. In the message, Dr. So Young looked tired and scared. She spoke in the human language, but the team's portable translator was still working well enough to understand her words. "We made contact 3 months ago," So Young said in the recording. "It calls itself the Shepherd, and it came from somewhere outside our reality. It showed us what's coming for the galaxy, a dark matter storm that will strip the atmosphere from every world and destroy all life." The team looked at each other in shock. "The Shepherd offered us a choice," So Young continued. "We could stay and die with everyone else, or we could come with it to a safe place in another dimension. But we couldn't tell anyone. If other species knew what was coming, they would panic and make things worse." "That's impossible," whispered Dr. Zendari. "You can't move entire populations between dimensions," but So Young's message wasn't finished. "We argued for weeks about what to do. Some of us wanted to stay and help find a solution. Others said we should accept the Shepherd's offer and save ourselves. In the end, we decided to take a third option." The recording showed So Young activating some kind of device. "We're going with the Shepherd, but we're not giving up on the rest of you. We're going to use their technology to find a way to save everyone. If we can't find an answer in the other dimension, we'll come back before the storm arrives. We'll find a way to protect the galaxy." The message ended with So Young looking directly at the camera. "If you're watching this, it means we're gone, and you're trying to figure out what happened. I'm sorry we couldn't tell you the truth, but we haven't abandoned you. We're coming back." The team sat in silence for a long time after the message ended. "She said the storm would come in 2 years, said Morgath. "That was 6 months ago." 18 months, calculated Dr. Zendari. 18 months until this dark matter storm reaches us. Zilvana's glow dimmed with worry. "And without the humans, we don't even have working communications between star systems. How can we prepare for something like this when we can't even talk to each other?" Dr. Zendari stood up and walked to the window that looked out over the empty human city. "Now I understand why everything fell apart so quickly when they left. They weren't just keeping peace and maintaining technology. They were preparing the entire galaxy for a disaster that only they knew was coming. All those protective positions for their military ships," said Morgath. "All the communication networks, the translation systems, the trade routes. They were building a framework that could coordinate the evacuation of every inhabited world in the galaxy. And we just let it all collapse," whispered Zilvana. Outside. The window, The empty streets of Seoul stretched into the distance. Somewhere in another dimension, the humans were working desperately to find a way to save everyone they had left behind. But with 18 months until the storm arrived and Galactic, civilization in ruins, Veltar wondered if even the humans could perform a miracle big enough to save them all. The sky above New Altair turned purple, and everyone knew their time was up. Veltar stood on the observation deck of the emergency shelter, watching the dark matter storm roll across the planet's atmosphere like a giant wave made of shadows. The storm had been traveling through space for millions of years, and now it was finally here. Behind him, thousands of Altarians crowded into the underground bunkers that had been built in the past year. The shelters were crude and uncomfortable, nothing like the advanced protection systems that humans would have designed. But they were the best the remaining galactic species could manage without human technology. "How long do we have?" asked Dr. Zendari, her voice shaking as she watched the purple clouds swirl overhead. "The computer models say maybe 6 hours, before the storm reaches full strength," replied Chief Engineer Bachtel. His 6 arms worked frantically on multiple control panels, trying to keep the shelter's life support systems running. "After that, any life on the surface will be destroyed." The dark matter storm had been moving through their galaxy for 8 months now, consuming everything in its path. It started at the outer rim, hitting the mining colonies and remote outposts first. The people living there had no warning because the quantum communication grid was still broken. They died alone in the darkness, with no way to call for help. Then the storm reached the more populated systems. Veltar would never forget the last transmission from Centauri Prime. The Centaurian homeworld had over 10 billion inhabitants, and they all vanished in less than a day. The final message was just screaming and then silence. Now it was Altair's turn. "Sir," called out Communications Officer Zilvana from her portable station. "I'm getting reports from the Corvin system. General Thokmar is demanding that we share our shelter technology with them." Veltar laughed bitterly. 8 months ago, he was stealing human mining stations and starting wars. Now he wants our help. "The Corvins aren't the only ones," said Zilvana. "Every surviving species is begging for assistance. The Lithians, the Thrakari, even the pride-filled Hegemony Alliance. They're all desperate." The problem was that nobody really understood how to fight the dark matter storm. Human scientists like Dr. So Young had spent years studying it, but their research was too advanced for other species to follow. The alien races had tried everything they could think of: force fields, energy barriers, underground cities, even evacuating entire populations to space stations. Nothing worked. The storm didn't just destroy buildings or kill people. It changed the basic structure of matter itself. Planets became lifeless rocks. Atmospheres evaporated into space. Even the toughest materials crumbled like dust when the dark matter touched them. "Status report from the Vega system," announced another technician. "The storm reached them 2 hours ago. All life signs have stopped." Veltar closed his eyes. Vega had been home to the peaceful researchers who studied alien cultures. They had never hurt anyone, and now they were gone forever. "What about the automated warning systems?" asked Dr. Zendari. "Are they still working?" Bachtel checked his screens. "Some of them, yes. The humans built those systems to work, even if everything else failed. They're still sending out alerts to any ships that might be traveling through space. Those warning systems were probably the only reason anyone was still alive. When the storm first appeared, the automated messages started broadcasting on all frequencies, telling people to find shelter immediately. The messages were simple and clear, designed so that any species could understand them, but understanding the warnings and surviving the storm were two different things. "Look at this," said Dr. Zendari, pointing to a display screen that showed energy readings from across the galaxy. "The storm isn't random. It follows specific patterns, like it's being controlled by something intelligent." Veltar studied the data. The storm had hit the most populated systems first, then moved to the industrial centers, and finally to the agricultural worlds. It was like something was deliberately trying to destroy galactic civilization in the most efficient way possible. The humans knew this would happen, said Morgath, who had been quietly monitoring military communications. They spent decades preparing for it. All those defensive positions, all that advanced technology, all the communication networks they built. They were creating a system that could coordinate the protection of every inhabited world in the galaxy. And we let it all fall apart in 3 days, said Zilvana sadly. The storm was getting closer. Through the shelter's reinforced windows, they could see the purple clouds beginning to touch the planet's surface. Where the storm made contact, the ground simply disappeared, leaving behind smooth, empty space. "Incoming transmission," announced Zilvana suddenly. It's coming from the storm itself." Everyone stopped what they were doing and stared at her. "That's impossible," said Dr. Zendari. "Nothing can transmit from inside a dark matter storm." "I'm putting it on the main speakers," said Zilvana. The sound that filled the shelter was unlike anything they had ever heard. It was deep and musical, but also completely alien. The portable translator tried to convert it into understandable words, but all it could produce were fragments. "Children of this dimension, time to return. The cycle continues. Old. Life ends. New life begins. It's trying to communicate with us," whispered Dr. Zendari. The voice continued, becoming clearer as the translator worked to decode it. "Your species have grown beyond your boundaries. You have spread across the stars like a disease. The cleansing must occur so that new forms of life can take their place." Veltar felt cold terror run through his body. The storm wasn't a natural disaster. It was deliberate genocide. "Wait," said Morgath, looking at his military scanner. "I'm detecting something else. There are energy signatures moving inside the storm. They look almost like ships." On the display screen, ghostly outlines appeared within the purple clouds. They were enormous, larger than space stations, and they moved with purpose through the destructive energy of the storm. "Those aren't ships," said Dr. Zendari, her voice filled with awe and horror. "Those are living beings. The storm isn't just destroying life. It's feeding something that lives inside it." The purple clouds were almost touching the shelter now. In minutes, the dark matter would reach them, and everything they had built would be consumed by whatever ancient intelligence controlled the storm. "Sir," said Zilvana urgently, "I'm getting another transmission. This one is different." "Put it through," ordered Veltar. This time the voice was human. It was clear and strong and filled with determination. "This is Captain Bo Ram of the Human Dimensional Fleet. We're coming home." The dark matter storm had reached the inner systems, and Nexus Prime was dying. Veltar stood in the emergency command center, watching the last few working screens flicker and fail. The station's power was almost gone. Outside the windows, space itself looked wrong. The familiar stars were disappearing one by one, swallowed by a darkness that seemed to eat light itself. "All communication with the outer shelters is lost," reported Zilvana, her small Lithian body barely glowing now. The stress had drained most of her natural light. Dr. Zendari was hunched over her instruments, trying to get readings on the approaching storm. "It will hit us in 6 hours," she said quietly. "Maybe less." Morgath, the big Thrakari security chief, checked his weapons one more time. It was a useless gesture. No weapon ever made could fight this enemy, but old habits died hard. "Any word from the evacuation ships?" asked Veltar. "The last ship left 3 hours ago," replied Chief Engineer Boktel. "They took whoever they could carry to the deep space shelters, but most of the station crew chose to stay." Veltar nodded. He had made the same choice. Someone needed to keep the communication systems working as long as possible, in case any of the surviving shelters needed help, even if that help never came. The past week had been chaos. When news of the storm reached the core worlds, panic spread faster than the darkness itself. Some species tried to evacuate their entire populations. Others went to war, fighting over the few remaining safe ships. The Corvan Empire had actually attacked refugee convoys, claiming the ships belonged to them. Only the peaceful Lithians and a few other species had worked together, pooling their resources to save as many people as possible. But even working together, they could only evacuate a tiny fraction of those who needed rescue. "Sir," said Zilvana suddenly, staring at her screen, "I'm getting something on the emergency channel." Everyone turned to look at her. The emergency channel hadn't been used in days. Most people assumed it was dead like everything else. "It's a single ship," she continued, her voice filled with disbelief, "coming from the direction of the storm. But that's impossible. Nothing can survive in there." Dr. Zendari rushed to her instruments. "I'm reading one vessel, small size, but the energy signature is—" She paused, checking her readings again. "I've never seen anything like this. The ship is generating some kind of protective field. Can you identify the species?" asked Veltar. Zilvana worked frantically with her communication equipment. "I'm getting a signal. It's in the human language." The entire command center fell silent. Everyone stared at the communication screen as static cleared and a familiar face appeared. It was a human woman, probably in her 40s, with short black hair and tired but determined eyes. She wore a uniform that none of them recognized, but her voice was calm and steady. "This is Captain Boram of the dimensional vessel New Soul," she said. "I am requesting permission to dock with Nexus Prime." Veltar found his voice first. "Captain Boram, this is Counselor Veltar. We thought all humans were gone. Where have you been?" Boram's expression was serious. "We've been in another dimension, working on a solution to the storm. I'm here to make you an offer." "An offer?" asked Dr. Zendari. "Humanity can save this galaxy," Boram said simply. "We learned how to control the storm, how to push it back, how to protect every inhabited world, but we can't do it under the old system." Morgath stepped forward. "What do you mean?" Boram's image flickered as the station's power fluctuated. "For the past 18 months, we've watched what happened when we left. We've seen the wars, the collapsed trade routes, the failed communications. We've seen how quickly everything fell apart without us holding it together. We tried to maintain things," protested Veltar. "But we didn't understand your technology." "That's exactly the problem," said Boram. "You didn't understand because you never needed to. You let humans handle everything difficult while you focused on your own concerns. But we can't do that anymore." She paused, looking directly at the camera. "The storm isn't the only threat. Out there, our people learned about others in the alternate dimension. Worse things are coming, and the galaxy needs to be united and prepared." "What are you asking for?" said Veltar. "Complete authority," Boram replied without hesitation. "Humanity returns as the protectorate species of the galaxy. Every major decision goes through human oversight. Every military fleet answers to human command. Every planet accepts human-appointed governors to ensure cooperation." The command center erupted in shocked voices. Even facing extinction, the idea of surrendering control to another species was almost unthinkable. "That's impossible," shouted Dr. Zendari. "No species would agree to that." "Then they can face the storm alone," said Boram calmly. "Look around you. Your civilization is collapsing. Your people are dying. The old way of doing things failed the moment we left." "This is conquest disguised as rescue," protested Morgath. Boram's expression hardened. "This is reality. Humans have been the foundation of galactic stability for over a century. We've been your translators, your peacekeepers, your innovators, and your protectors. The only difference now is that we're asking you to admit it officially." Veltar looked around the command center. His people were scared and angry, but they were also desperate. Outside, the storm was getting closer. In a few hours, they would all be dead unless something miraculous happened. "What about the species that refuse?" he asked. "They can keep their independence," Boram said, "but they won't get protection from the storm or any future threats. They'll be on their own." "You're forcing us to choose between freedom and survival," said Zilvana quietly. "No," replied Boram. "I'm offering you a choice between survival and extinction. The galaxy proved it can't govern itself without human involvement. We're just making that arrangement official." Before anyone could respond, alarms started ringing throughout the station. The storm had accelerated and was now only 2 hours away. Boram's ship docked with Nexus Prime, and she came aboard with a small team of humans. They looked different somehow. Their clothes were made of materials that seemed to bend light. Their equipment was beyond anything the aliens had ever seen. "We need your answer now," Boram said as she entered the command center. "Every minute we delay, more people die in the storm." Veltar looked at his companions. Dr. Zendari was staring at the human technology with amazement and fear. Morgath was clearly struggling with the idea of surrender. Zilvana was thinking about her people, scattered in shelters across the dying galaxy. "If we agree," Veltar said slowly, "what happens to our cultures, our governments, our way of life?" "You keep them," Boram replied. "Humans aren't interested in ruling your daily lives. We just want authority over the things that affect galactic security and stability. Trade, military matters, space travel, and emergency response." "The things that matter most," muttered Morgath. "The things we've always handled anyway," corrected Boram. "The only difference is that now you'll acknowledge it." Outside the station, the first effects of the storm began to hit. The lights dimmed further, and everyone could feel a strange pressure in the air. Veltar made his decision. "On behalf of the Galactic Council, I accept your terms." Boram nodded and activated a device on her wrist. Immediately, every screen in the command center lit up with activity. Across the galaxy, the hidden human shelters came online, their protective fields expanding and linking together. The storm hit Nexus Prime like a wall of nothingness. But instead of destroying the station, it flowed around it like water around a stone. The human protection field held firm. 6 months later, Veltar stood in the rebuilt Galactic Council chamber. The seats were arranged differently now. Human representatives sat at the head table with Ambassador Hyunwoo as the acknowledged first speaker of the council. The galaxy was safer and more prosperous than ever before. The communication networks worked perfectly. Trade flowed smoothly between systems. There had been no wars since the humans returned, but everyone knew the price of that peace. Humanity hadn't returned as equals. They had returned as guardians, protectors, and ultimately rulers of galactic civilization. As Hyunwoo called the council session to order, Veltar reflected on what they had learned. Sometimes the price of survival was accepting that some species were simply better at leadership than others. And sometimes that was exactly what the galaxy needed.